On today's episode of the Real Recovery Podcast, episode number 60, we are honored to welcome Conard Carroll. From early academic success and a promising career in software development to the depths of addiction, Conard's journey is a powerful reminder that recovery is not linear, but always possible. In this deeply moving conversation, Conard shares how his experience with methadone, honesty, and community support helped him rebuild a life of purpose and self-worth. This episode is a heartfelt testament to the courage it takes to come back from the edge and the healing power of connection.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Recovery Podcast. I'm Julie, your co-host. On this journey of healing and transformation, together with my co-host Peter, we dive into the heart of recovery, sharing stories that resonate with courage and inspiration.
That's right, Julie. Each episode is a new chapter in this vast narrative of recovery, and we're honored to bring them to you. But keep in mind, the perspectives you'll hear are for informational purposes only and may not reflect the views of the podcast or our partners.
Indeed, while these conversations can be a powerful part of your recovery toolkit, they are not substitute for professional medical advice. We encourage you to seek guidance from your healthcare provider for any treatment-related decisions.
And if you're facing an immediate crisis, or if you just need to talk to someone who understands, don't hesitate to call the Recovery Crisis Line at 503-223-8569. That number is also on our website. Help is available 24/7.
Now let's begin our episode
of recovery, real recovery.
Welcome to the show. This is Peter with the Real Recovery Podcast with...
This is Julie, and we're with...
Conard.
And Conard's from our home group, which has been so good to us. And the part you missed that I said, but we weren't recording, so we started again, is really seeing Conard's growth. Seeing you show up, seeing you mature in the program, and I think understand it more, even though you're really smart and you've read the literature and you get it. But I was at the extended family meeting the other night and you chaired, and it was a really good meeting. Like I said, it got me to think. And when I think a lot, there was this guy, Todd, okay, my first year in the program. And I hated fucking Todd more than anything. And he was there every day and he'd be like, if I have a problem, I just give it to God. And I was like, wasn't that nice? And I love Todd. I've known him the whole time now. He has 52 years sober. And the shit he said made sense about 4 years later because I'm a little bit of a slow burn. But I get it now. But he pissed me off. But it got me thinking, which I think is a good thing. So we want to hear your story and then how you made it to our group and what you're doing now. Yeah. And you don't have 10 minutes. You have longer. Yeah.
I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. I finally moved to Portland in 2019. My parents were still together. There was a lot of love growing up. I used to say that it was a great childhood. And I always had a big problem trying to find any fault with anybody. And I'll talk a lot about that, how everything had to be my fault, right? Everything was my fault. And my parents tried the best they can. And I love them so much. And it means a lot. I was always smart. I was precocious and probably pretentious as well. I ended up wanting to be that really cool guy that I saw on TV in the movies. And that included sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I thought if I had those things, then I could have friends. Because there was a lot going on inside of me. Let me try and be more vulnerable. So my sexuality was a thing that I didn't really understand. And the more time that I spend now, especially sober, being able to think back to all that, it did have a big impact. I'm pansexual, but I was very straight acting. And it even surprises people today because that's just how I grew up. I didn't know how to talk about sexuality. Right. There wasn't a whole lot of talk about feelings growing up.
I think the same.
Yeah.
Peter and I both.
It's just my parents were born in 51 and 52 and they didn't know how to do it. And we wanted to. They would say they loved me, which was better than what they got. And that's great. So I never really fit I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And I thought if I could just force myself into some type of clique, then people would want to hang out with me.
Yeah.
And it's a tried and true way to find
to find a crew.
Yeah. To try and find a crew. And so that was like marijuana was my first drug. It was, and I did it alcoholically. I did it like an addict. It was silly and ridiculous. And this was back in Ohio, back in the late 90s and the early aughts. And I think it was about every 6 months I would get in trouble with the cops. And this was before I even turned 18. So I was a minor, and it was just a lot of hiding stuff from my parents because I didn't want to admit that I could make mistakes. I was creating facades very early of this is what I want you to think. And that just led to me not very quickly becoming overwhelmed a lot is I think what it is. That's what it is that I can see now. Back then, it was just me not understanding. I remember telling my shrink, like, it's like I'm watching myself do things. And now, and eventually that led to me doing things against my will. And that's something I only recently started to really figure out is doing things against my will. So I wasn't really sure about college and stuff. I got in. I finally had the opportunity to not go to class once I got to college, and I took that.
I was good my freshman and sophomore year. Seriously, my senior year, I didn't even know it until I got my transcripts, but I withdrew from 15 classes while I was working for the escort service. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. I never even withdrew. I would just like the very first try, I think I went for 2 weeks, and then I just stopped showing up. But I told like my parents that I was still going, and I tried to keep that going for 2 quarters or something because I had this like scholarship and I wanted so hard to go to college and I wanted so much to do well, but I had no idea how to cope with life. And so I was like, let me just go smoke a bunch of pot with my friends. Let me get girlfriends. Let me do all these other things. And my cake and eat it too is of course what I was going for. And that fell apart. I bounced around. I mean, it was so long ago. Eventually, I was living back at home, and this is only like by 20. I graduated high school when I was 16. The whole school was accelerated. So I'm 16 years old. I go out there. I got a car. It was so exciting. Those 4 years were, I don't know, a bunch of pot, maybe a couple of other fun drugs, but I ended up back at home. And I'm like, all right, I need to start getting my stuff back together. So I enroll in this smaller college at the University of Cincinnati. My mom's driving me to school every morning. I'm starting to do well. Things are starting to work out. I end up finding out that I have a natural ability to do software development. That it just makes sense in my head. And I saw a lot of people who it didn't. So that led to a co-op or an intern position at a company. And I was like, sweet, I got a job.
I want you to know that our brains are built entirely different.
Right.
No, in college, I had to do BASIC and Fortran. That's what was popular when I was in fucking school, and C. And I had to write this program about, so you're a patient in a hospital, right? So I put in your room number and your name is supposed to come up and this stuff. So there was loops. And let me tell you, fuck those loops.
Yeah. All right. And I'm already great. And so and these people, I liked some of the people I worked with. Like my manager was a really cool guy, and we could just talk about life and all types of stuff. And eventually it came time where it would be the time I would graduate, but because of my natural ability to not go to class and not do my homework, I didn't actually graduate. So I just told everybody I did, moved over to be a full-time employee, and just went on with life. And I was getting paid more than enough money to live well. And so I just kept on doing that eventually. And there was always alcohol. That's at 21, I switched from pot to alcohol because I knew before I turned 21, the only time I drank, I binge drank. and it was dangerous. And for some reason, at that point in my life, consequences mattered. I don't know how, but
Maybe you liked your job.
I don't know. But yeah, as soon as I turned 21, it became alcohol. I got my first and only Dewey a month before I turned 22. And that worried some people, but looking back, remembering back, I knew I had a problem. People don't drive drunk. And this was not the first time I had drove drunk. But that did not stop me. Luckily, my parents had a friend that was a lawyer, because in Ohio, because marijuana was illegal. And of course, I still loved marijuana. So I had that in the car. So I got the DUI charge, I got a possession charge, and I got a paraphernalia charge.
Oh.
And it's that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Triple play.
It was always possession of paraphernalia. All those other times too. And they're like, we'll drop the paraphernalia charge if you plead to the possession charge. But it was just a minor misdemeanor. The worst, if I got caught with it in the car, the worst part was them taking my pot.
Oh, that's like, God damn it.
I know. It's a little, I just had an interaction with the police. I need to get high. I want to get high. But I knew I had a problem, and I didn't care. I was going to keep living my life. Eventually, oh gosh, I moved out. I spent like 6 months with a roommate, a friend from work, and then I got my own place. And there would just be these kind of phases that I would go through where I would keep the place really nice for a while, and then I wouldn't. And it didn't make any sense to me. And I was very isolated. I didn't have anybody over. I still didn't know how to make friends. I spent way too much time. Like, you remember Yahoo groups? Like, yeah. And I met a couple of people there. One of them was a woman who we had this phone relationship with for 2 years, where she only apparently lived like 2 hours away, but I think we dated for 18 months or something. So I don't know if it was a real catfish situation or what was going on, but I wanted a relationship that bad. I wanted intimacy that bad. And somehow that just filled that need for me.
It was safe.
And it was safe. And then I would tell people, oh, I have a girlfriend. And then the hoops I would have to jump through because they never met her. And I didn't want to push her too hard to make this a real thing, because then she would run away. And all of this was just feeding into me fear. There was the fear. And then I'm a whole lot of low self-esteem. I'm not worth it. If I lose this, there's never going to be anybody else. And that happened. That's like a constant in my life, where somehow I don't feel like I'm worth it. That's one of the big affirmations that it gets tough to look in a mirror to just say to myself, I'm worth it. I'm worth it. It can get me emotional.
A similar complex. Yeah. That I wasn't good
I just
enough.
say I'm chubby. Like, I look in the mirror and say I'm chubby, but worth it. I'm just saying. But I look in there and I see chubby. No.
And then eventually, a few years later, I guess I was 27 and I met.
What happened to the girl though? It just.
Oh, okay, we're going to get there. So I think I was 27. I met a woman at work, and started talking and started wanting to date. And so I had to break up with the phone one.
Okay.
Which it was really funny. She's, I'm not going to wait for you. I'm like, you're not going to wait for me, because I remember I was in the Bay Area for work, and I was out in the parking lot of this hotel where I was staying and having this kind of phone conversation with her. You never want, like, finally saying these, because I had found somebody else. I could finally say these things to the phone girl that I had never been able to say before. And it was just like, okay. And then the woman I met from work, she ended up being my first wife, which was because she was there. I enjoyed her company. She's, I'm sure, a great individual. If it's definitely on my ninth step, but I was not a good friend. I was not a good boyfriend. I was not a good husband.
You were just happy to have someone.
Yeah, I was happy to have someone, and I was totally taking advantage of the situation. And I was drinking alcoholically. I was sneak drinking. all the signs were there. And
Was she a normie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much. We would drink together because I think she was 21 when we met, and she had drank a whole lot. So I got to introduce her into drinking. And of course, she thought I was just on the heavy drinking side of normal. And I would do everything I could to make sure she believed that. Eventually, there was serious questions. Like, I'm pretty sure AA was mentioned on a couple of occasions, but I would have none of that. And that's where we had planned to move. We were like, I was in my early 30s, and we came to the conclusion that if we're ever going to move out of Cincinnati, Ohio, if we're ever going to move out of the Midwest, now's the time. So we took some vacations to the coast, and we decided on Portland. Now, in between deciding on Portland and the date to move to Portland, the marriage ended. And I was like, I'm moving to Portland. I came here. I drove here with 2 dogs from that relationship. And
did you know people out here? So I
did not.
Oh, so
I didn't know anybody.
We have to move.
Yeah,
it is. The only part that stayed the same was my job, because I worked for Kroger. I changed jobs to work for Kroger at the time.
Okay. Kroger's big.
Kroger owns Fred Meyer, so I moved from the head office in Cincinnati into technically, I work for Kroger Digital, which is at that point, it was like a company inside a company, because we were working on their e-commerce website. And so Kroger Digital actually had a remote office inside the Fred Meyer headquarters over on Powell. And so I got to keep the job. I got this I rented this nice little house on 73rd and Powell, like sight unseen. I didn't know you could get a rental agent. You just pay them an upfront fee, and because they knew how people move across the country. And I got here the end of May in 2019. And I was so excited to go and buy weed. That was like, I know, right? And I was so excited to get away, and I made a whole new set of rules for myself, right? Because that's what alcoholics do. Is I made a whole new set of rules. And the big one was, I'm not going to sneak drink anymore. I'm not going to sneak drug anymore. I'm not going to sneak cheat anymore. I'm going to hang out with people, and I'm going to be honest.
Authentic.
Yeah. And that's going to fix everything. And it didn't. It did. I'm a heavy drinker, and I want to do drugs, and those are the people that I started hanging out with, then that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, because you gave yourself permission to go all the way.
I did. When I was with my first wife, there was like alcohol and pot, and there was just lying there for some weird reason. And I didn't put myself in a lot of situations where there would have been more than that. And then I got out here, and I remember toward the end of 2019, I called the summer of 2019 my dry run, because 2020 was going to be where it's at.
COVID.
Right.
Yeah. Before we knew about.
Yeah. Before COVID happened. But by that point, I had met the people that were going to introduce me, because it went right from alcohol at the bars to cocaine. And then eventually it was heroin. And
cocaine's expensive.
All drugs are expensive.
Yeah, but cocaine you have to keep doing to stay high. I'm just saying. That's why they call it a rich man's drug.
Yeah, it's very fancy, right? It's just it. And I had more than enough money to keep me and the people that I was hanging out with well supplied, feeding right back. I got to feed that really base instinct from childhood of, if I have it, people will come.
Yeah.
And you're accepted. You're being authentic.
And I'm being authentic. My first summer here, I got a boyfriend. I told my parents that I came out, and it was like, look at all these great things I'm doing.
Yeah.
But that didn't make up for everything else. And I got in so right after I started the heroin, I got in another committed relationship, and we were using together. And that just continued. And I got fired for the first time. I got fired from that Kroger job. found another one 5 weeks later because being a software engineer, there was still a demand at that time. And then, but by the time I lost that next job, the demand wasn't there. Everybody always says, oh, you're in computers, you can always get a job.
Yeah.
That's not true. It's not. And so but I needed money. And I just started spending. I went through all my, like right now, I have nothing. By the time I got into recovery, I had almost nothing.
Yeah.
And it was an exorbitant amount of money, especially because eventually it went from heroin to blues, of course.
Don't know what blues are.
Fentanyl. Smoking fentanyl. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they press them to look like oxys.
Oh.
So look blue oxys, and they even like press them with the little M on it. So if you Google it, Google would tell you that this is not a fentanyl pill, it's an oxy pill. The big difference is, not to trigger anybody, but the fentanyl pills will burn. They'll burn because real Oxycontin doesn't burn. They have all that extra stuff in there.
That's why they have the billboard. There's a billboard with the blue M, and it says, this one is fentanyl, this one isn't. Can you tell the difference?
Exactly.
And you can't. They look identical.
They do.
See, I did pay attention to the billboard.
And that's what they're saying, because unfortunately, people could say, I want oxy, and then they end up with fentanyl, and then they OD.
We had Robert Sanders on here, and he said, we learned about what monkey snot was. We didn't know what that was. And he said, heroin in a
Afrin bottle, like nasal spray.
Squirted in your nose like a heroin liquid, and I had never heard
That sounds really convenient.
It does. If I was a user again.
I never heard of that. And fentanyl not being around when I used meth was still meth, and it's been interesting to learn. But he said there's no real heroin out there anymore. He said it all is cut, and he said every pill, you just don't know if you're getting a third of the pill or a half of the pill, and it looks the same. Yeah. So I think
it's pretty scary.
It is. And I think that's actually a good education piece, that don't assume.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was. And that's, we finally got to that. And it's really sad to say, we had people tell stories about how they had multiple drug dealers, and we had one that we would go through, and we were vastly overcharged, but we had one. And that's where eventually we couldn't afford to really even get high, because your immunity, or it just builds up.
Tolerance.
Your tolerance. Thank you. Your tolerance builds up. And I'm tired of just being sick and not sick. I would like to get high. And so we were thinking we're going to have to go, instead of smoking it, we're going to have to start shooting up or something, which is even more dangerous. That was scary. That was really scary. And my partner met someone, I think at work, who started talking to them about methadone. And methadone, it saved my life. It really did. We went to the clinic and we got on it, and I stopped smoking blues, and it was crazy.
That is real.
It is.
It's medication assisted treatment.
Yeah.
And I love that part of your story, because one, we haven't had anybody on with it, and two, AA is great. Okay. But it's not for everyone. And there are so many different ways to get sober. And I love that helped. Okay. And I love that for some it's different. And I also know, just from some of the people we've interviewed, that coming off this new drug, fentanyl, can be just as serious and worse as heroin. Whatever it takes, I think.
Yeah.
When you were finding out about the clinic, or when your partner, was it just to get another way to get, or were you thinking, I'm done, we want to get off this?
So we knew we had to get off the blues. That was the goal. And we succeeded in that. And it sucks because you got to go to the clinic every day to get your dose. And this clinic was actually open 7 days a week. And you would get there in the morning. For this one, it was out on 162nd, Portland Metro. And as I later found out, they are the last chance clinic for some people, because they will accept anybody. And so you drive up and you check in with your phone because they had the little geofence thing. And then you would wait, and then you had to wait in line. And sometimes you would wait 10 minutes. Sometimes you would wait 2 or 3 hours.
Wow.
This is during COVID?
No, this wasn't until 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's how short my opiate drama was, but that's how quickly it ruined my life. And yeah, because it was October 3rd of 2022 is when I started methadone, and then early in November or mid-November was the last time I smoked fentanyl. And you got to do it. And there's a million excuses to not get to the clinic, to not follow the rules, because you start at a really low dose and they don't expect you to just stop doing opiates when you get there. You got to get up to a dose that you can stop, that you stop experiencing withdrawal symptoms.
Right.
And that takes a while, and you got to talk to people and you got to figure stuff out. And then
you got to be consistent.
You got to be consistent, and then eventually once you stop smoking dope and you're not experiencing withdrawals and you keep coming back, eventually you get what they call takeouts, which is you get 2 days worth, or you get 3 days worth, or 5 days worth. Okay. So you bring your little lockbox there, and they give you your individual little bottles of your methadone with the date on all this stuff, and you can take it home, and then you don't have to go to the clinic. But if you mess up, let's say you go and you fail a UA, or you don't bring all your bottles back, or you have to come back early. There's all these rules that you have to follow, and you'll get kicked back down to daily because they need to monitor you.
They don't want you selling it, trading it, doing too much.
All the things. And it is a very archaic system, and it's all very dependent on the clinic you go to, because there's a doctor there, a real doctor there that has to write these scripts. And then there's the staff there, there's the counselors there. There's so much that has to come together, plus somebody's willingness to do it.
Right.
To make this successful.
No, I agree.
How is it taken? I'm just curious.
It's liquid. It's liquid. It tastes like cough syrup.
Oh, so you just take a tablespoon?
It's measured in milliliters. The prescription is written in milligrams, and then it's 10 milligrams per milliliter, I think. So I got up to 235 milligrams of methadone, which is a lot of people can be stable on less than 100. But they also said with fentanyl, it takes a lot more. And also, we didn't really know. I didn't really know because I wasn't ready to stop everything. I just wanted to stop smoking loose. That was my goal. So eventually, it was like, the sooner that we get to the same dose, the sooner we can start. Then we can start working toward takeouts, because you can't increase your dose and have takeouts at the same time. So eventually, we got there. And we just kept coming back. And then there was these clinics, they have so many people that go there. And everybody needs a counselor. Your counselor makes a lot of decisions along with the doctor for all the things to go right. And it's really easy to get frustrated. It's really easy.
I bet.
And
especially because Portland, from us being in a lot of stuff, a lot of events, Portland is number one, I think 2 now in drug usage, and was last in treatment services available, which it's getting a little better, but I can't even imagine at that time.
Yeah, it was crazy. It seemed like it went so fast. And so one of the things that Portland Metro didn't do is they didn't test for alcohol. Which I was very okay with.
Yeah. How you say it.
And, of course, I'm sure they told me, you shouldn't drink on this. This is a really bad idea.
They say that with my medication,
right.
too.
And they say that. But no, I just went right back to my alcoholic ways. But I'm sure it was very dangerous, but it also put me right into so many of those old behaviors, so much of that drinking. And it's not like I went and started stink drinking again or any of that kind of stuff. But I got so lonely. I got just all that, just once
isolation.
Again. And now I didn't even have the money or the house or the family nearby or anything that I had back in Ohio. And so it destroyed that romantic relationship with my partner. We still lived together. And then they got on Kaiser Insurance. Because before we were paying out of pocket for methadone, it was like $15 a day, which in the big scheme of things, it's a lot cheaper than exorbitant amounts I was spending on drugs. And there was a different treatment center, different methadone place to go to. And my partner went there first, and she warned me that they were going to test for alcohol. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. And I show up there. It was a Friday morning. I show up there, and the first thing they do is breathalyze me.
Wow.
And they breathalyze me, and then they ask me for my keys.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
And I'm like, and this is Friday morning. I'm like, okay. And so they take me in a director's office or somebody. And the first thing he does is he gives me my keys back. This is your property. We can't take your property. We just wanted to make a point. You shouldn't be driving. And then they made sure that I could still dose somewhere for the day. I could go right back. I went right back to Portland Metro, and I gave them some sob story of I got in a fight with my partner the night before, so I'd been drinking. And I never actually saw the number that I blew, but I can hardly imagine. And that was my normal. That there was no fight. Probably out. I can't even remember. It didn't matter. That's the point. So I'm like, okay, I need to do something. The next Monday I went back, and I had stopped drinking early enough to pass a breathalyzer.
Nice.
Yeah, it was all right. And then I was like, well, so I would dose, and then I would drink, and then I would stop. And then I would do all in 24 hours. But
if there's a will, there's a way.
Well, yeah. And gosh, that was like, that was the end of July. No, that was the beginning of July, I think. And another thing that was going on at this point is my partner, who has been involved with the rooms and with big recovery for a long time, was like, how about you go to a meeting and you find somebody else that is like trying to stop smoking blues or just anything like that.
Yeah.
And I had gone to the Alano Club. I had gone to HA meetings because I was still drinking, and I had no idea. What was going on, but I went there and I liked it. I did.
I love it.
I remember I wouldn't, because I would go to HA and I would go to NA meetings. And
I don't know what HA is.
Oh, Heroin Anonymous.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And they have, one of their readings is "No More Suffering" is their kind of slogan. That's what it says on their chips and stuff. And their readings are different.
Don't make me cry. I do it easy.
It was just something else. I had no idea.
You didn't know there was a better way.
I didn't know.
Yeah. It's interesting that the clinics, they didn't have any references to.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Meetings for.
I had a counselor, and I was supposed to have a relapse prevention plan, and I was way too.
You're so smart that you were smarter than the plan.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes they say, I've seen this one guy in AA, and he was brilliant accountant. Oh my God, brilliant. But he was so smart that he could not stay sober. For real. He was brilliant, but yet, you know what I'm saying?
I could do it is what was so inside me. Being told you can do it. And that's all I had, is I can do it.
Yeah.
Because it was just so like this. If I can't do it, then it can't happen. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And I finally got there, and that didn't get me sober, but that planted the seed. And it wasn't that much longer until the drinking and the not drinking where the alcohol withdrawal really got to me. I remember it being midnight and I had to have stopped drinking and I was shaking because alcohol withdrawals are so different than opiate withdrawals. Not only the fact that they can kill you, but it was just but they are similar enough. And I remember, it's so fucking dumb. I called my drug dealer and she talked me down from blues because I was just like, this is just ridiculous. This is just ridiculous. And I can't even remember now if I was loaded or if I was like, because I had to have stopped drinking, but I was still drunk, which was horrible for me. And I was just going through all this horribleness.
Yeah.
And it was like, if I could just make it through. And it was just so bad. But eventually they make you do EKGs at methadone clinics at certain doses. And mine was very high. And I had never gotten one done at this new place. So at the third or the fourth week, I finally went in to do one. And it was so funny because I went in, I don't know what time of day it was. I could have been somewhat drunk or normal drunk. Who knows? I go in, I get it done. And I'd had them before. And it was like in out. You go in, you get it done, you go back out. I go in, I get it done, and the tech tells me to sit down back in the waiting room.
Oh, boy.
And I see him like going off to a couple places. Then he tells me I can go. The next morning, I come into the clinic to get my methadone, and they're like, oh, we have a note here where you have to talk to the physician. You have to talk to the doctor. And he goes, you have a QTC of over 500. And I go, what?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let me put it like this. There's a 1 in 10 chance that your heart is going to go into an abnormal rhythm that you will have to get shocked for it to go back.
Oh, geez.
Okay. And so it's like, I'm immediately going to lower your dose by 20, but I suggest that you go to the ER and get fluids and all types of stuff. And I'm sure this is very directly related to the alcohol withdrawal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my body was just freaking out. And Friday, and this is so great. I was telling Julie before about my experience with Kaiser and my PCP. And I'm driving. My PCP called and left me a voicemail. And the voicemail pretty much says, I really hope you're not answering because you're on your way to the ER to go get checked out.
Yeah.
And I think I did go. I got fluids, and the ER doc, I was telling him about alcohol withdrawal, and he says, oh, you want some Librium?
What the fuck?
Yes. And I didn't really know what it was, but I get home, and the partner is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's prescribed.
So it's okay.
So it's okay. And there was other parts of me that were already on a downward spiral. I forgot a very important part. One of the other things that you can do that doesn't show up on a UA is nitrous oxide whippets.
Uh-huh.
I think probably a month or two before the treatment transition, there was one weekend where we're like, God, everything sucks. We want to just feel any type of high. Let's go to Fantasyland or something and buy some whippets, right? I didn't stop. I didn't stop buying them. I didn't stop doing them. I was just on and on. Just that was addict me, just begging for anything to get me out of where I was. And so by the point that I needed to go to the ER, my brain was mush. I was like falling asleep in the middle of sentences. It's great because at one point they asked me like, have you fallen lately? And I hadn't told anybody this until I was with the doctor. I think my partner was there. I was like, oh yeah, there was this one time on my little house, there was a couple steps up to the door. And there was one time I remember walking out of the door, and then the next thing I know, I'm waking up and my leg's in the air. And I didn't remember I couldn't tell if I was going up or down steps.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was a fall.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't know. I remember it sucked. I don't know. I don't know. And so, yeah, by that Friday, I had to go to the ER. Even my gait was wrong. Everything about, my body was no longer me. And so there was that ER. I think I might have gone back to the ER on Sunday for some reason. At one point, I remember being in the ER and I had a real problem with needles. I remember I went to the ER all by myself, which you're not supposed to do, but I was there. And I got back and I was so afraid of them putting needles in me. I remember like curling up and just closing my eyes. And eventually they went away and they said they'd be back. And I just remember like it was surreal. It was so surreal.
Yeah.
And eventually, I guess I just talked myself back into it and letting them do it. And then Monday, further conversations with Kaiser Addiction, and I got admitted to the hospital because I was a danger to myself.
Right.
My
Shutting
body
down every which way.
It was really bad. There was all this vitamin deficiency stuff going on. When I started, they had me on the monitor where if you got out of bed, it made a really loud noise.
Oh, yeah.
I remember I couldn't text her. Couldn't do it. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
I remember having to talk to my mom about it. And I had waited until I was stable on methadone before I ever told her. I think it was a text. Hey, Mom. I'm in treatment for opioid addiction.
Yeah.
I was so horribly good at lying to my mom. And it sucked.
I was pretty good at it too.
And she really wanted to believe. My mom is a really wonderful person.
She loved you.
She loved me, and she only ever wanted the best for me. And I made her life and my dad's life so difficult. And yeah, and then they're back in the Midwest, and here I am. And they had my partner with me, or I had my partner with me, and that was go between some of the time. But eventually, so I'm admitted to the hospital. 3 or 4 days later, I should start with this. When I got admitted, they told my partner that they weren't sure if I would ever get better.
Wow. That's intense.
That was their reason to go back out. And
their reason or your reason?
That was their reason. They went from the hospital to the dealer's house.
Wow.
Oh, the partner.
Yeah.
Being a member of the No Matter What Club, they just were looking for a reason.
Very much. And they've talked about that, right? That's all we needed is
a reason.
And I don't really blame myself for that, but it's just part of the story.
Yeah.
And then a few days later, they're like, okay, you're making good recovery. And partners, you can't come home because I'm not going to take care of you. And there's multiple reasons for that. But Kaiser, I was down at Sunnyside, down in Clackamas County, and they're like, hey, we have a treatment center in the basement. Would you like to go? Mm-hmm. Brookside is in the basement of Sunnyside. And I'm like, well, sure. There were some questions of it's not a hospital, it's not part of the hospital. So you have to be able to like take care of yourself. So they had occupational therapy, had to clear me to be able to walk and to shower. And we got there by the 7th or 8th day, and they wheeled me down there. And a walker, which was not what did I call it? It was not a movement assist device. It was a fall prevention device. It was a nice one with a seat. It was just because I had fallen and I wasn't trustworthy. And so I got down there, and this is my first ever treatment, in person. And
how lucky.
I know.
I'm just saying, how lucky to be in a hospital that had a treatment center in the bottom and someone caring enough to send you there.
Yep.
That's a miracle right there.
Yeah. And they had two sides. There's Brookside mental health, and there's Brookside like substance abuse help. And it was, which one is longer? was the deciding factor of which side to go with.
Interesting.
At least that was some parts of the conversation that I remember.
Well, and that's probably for safety reasons.
All types of stuff. But you're right. It's the wonderful parts of coincidence and synchronicity, right? That's how my higher power, one of the ways it talks to me. And that's right where it was. And I get there and I'm like, I'm getting my mental faculties back. I'm making sentences. I can carry on conversations. I can text. I remember vaping in the hospital bed. I could still do that. And it must have been one of the first couple meetings with my counselor down there. It was this wonderful woman. And she looks at me and she goes, all right, are you going to do controlled drinking or abstinence?
There is such a thing as fucking controlled drinking.
It's part of their program. Theirs is not they're not a 12-step treatment center.
Got it.
It's very like DBT.
Yeah.
Cognitive thinking.
Cognitive skills, the CBT. It's giving you tools. You're going to figure out your own way. It's only 3 weeks long. We know what those can be.
It is a start, though.
It was what I needed. It's a super bougie place because it was a single occupancy room. I had my own bathroom in my room.
Nice.
It was all hospital food, so we got to order it the day ahead.
Nice.
Oh yeah, you didn't have to go to group. You could just chill in your room all day if you wanted to, and some people did. Some people took it as a little vacation. So she asked me, controlled drinking or abstinence? And it just happened. Abstinence.
Amen. You're going to make me cry.
It was so weird because it was like, I was surprised I said it. And then I started to hee and haw a little bit about it. And she's like, what are you thinking about? I'm like, oh, I'm afraid I won't be fun anymore. Which is classic, right? That's been one of my things from the very beginning. That inside, I won't be the same person anymore if I'm not drinking. And she goes, to paraphrase, look where that fun got you.
Yeah.
You're in a treatment. This is rehab, honey. Shit. And so it was in that same conversation. I'm like, because I think corny came up, and I'm like, fuck it. I'll just be the corniest person out there. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do it. And so I was like, I remember getting the material and I had a little journal and I would write down how many days I had left. Not because I was excited about leaving, but that's how many more days I had to get the most that I could out of it.
I love that.
And it was good. It was just it was what I needed right then.
Yeah.
I understand because I was so pissed that I went to prison at first and it took me a long time to get there, but it was exactly what I needed. I needed a fucking timeout.
Yeah.
And it seems like the only thing you didn't do is the only thing I did, meaning I don't know about any of the things you talked about. I really don't. But you don't know about IV drug usage. So look, fair trade, but I really needed a timeout and I'm grateful now. I wasn't at the time, but yeah.
And they would bring meetings in and I was so excited. I was so excited when I heard they were going to bring meetings in.
I love it.
Because I don't know if I ever shared in a meeting that I had gone to yet because I was loaded. There was one meeting I went to where it just ended up being me and the secretary. There was this little HA men's meeting that was on Tuesday nights, and it was very low attendance. And so it would that's where I met Daryl.
Oh,
My Daryl?
Yeah.
Have you heard his story?
I've not listened to it yet, but I'm sure I will.
So I've known Daryl since my very first meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had the shooting gallery in his story where.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to see him take his 40 year. This was a couple years ago and he came in.
Yeah, he's at 42.
Yeah. So he took his 40-year chip in a meeting.
Isn't it crazy, the small world?
It is.
It's just like when Daryl told me that it was Al that saved his life.
Yeah.
I didn't fucking know that. Yeah, I ran home and called Al.
And so there was this one meeting where it was just me and one other person, and we just talked for an hour. And
Those are the best.
And I had a travel drink of choice for years. It had been Mike's Hard Lemonade, Black Cherry. And I had one in my truck on the way to the meeting, and I was drinking on my way back, but they didn't care. When I finally got a chance to get back to that meeting and see those guys and how happy they were that I made it back to the meeting, because they didn't know where I went. I got a treatment.
Hate that. Just so you know, I have spent a week before calling people that have vanished. And I'll be like, haven't seen ya. Like hoping that text or that nudge will bring you back. And I always want to know, and I know the percentage that stay. Okay. And I know, and I've learned it, but it wrecks me when there's somebody that's showing up every day. The ones that just come in and out, I don't get to know. But Colette is the best example. I sat there and counted every fucking day with her. And if she would have the only night she didn't come, I was like, bitch, where are you? And she was like, I had an appointment. I was like, next time, let me know. I'm not a sponsor. I'm not nothing, but I was freaking out. But I'm so glad they got to see you again. Seriously, like really glad.
I was so glad to get back because I had treatment at the hospital. And I had treatment for 4 weeks, and then I had 12 weeks of IOP that was on Tuesday. And of course, I could have done more to try and get a hold of it. I actually did. It was crazy that I reached out to somebody. And eventually, I did show up. And it was great. And I still see a couple of them around because that meeting doesn't exist anymore. But
is that how you got to ours?
No, not yet.
Okay, I'm dying to know.
There's a lot more meetings between. But they would tell me, like, we knew you were loaded. And now, even then, I was like,
you weren't fooling anyone.
I wasn't fooling anyone, and they didn't care. I was there. I was at a meeting.
You wanted to be sober.
Yeah, I did. I really did. Even though I didn't know it,
you wouldn't have been at the meeting otherwise.
Right, I know. It was, so I get out of they brought a meeting in, and I was so excited to share, but they didn't let people share. It was just the two people that brought the meeting in. They just told their story for 40 minutes, and then it was over. I remember being so disappointed. And eventually, this guy brought a meeting in, and he opened it up, and he let us share. And I'm crying. You think I'm crying now? This was like full on, just going.
I know.
And he gives me his number, and then some not too many days later, I get, because we only got our phones at night. I get my phone, and there's a text from my partner, and they were in trouble, and there was nothing I could do about it. And in my head, I was already at my dealer's house. And it just made me realize that was it. That's this autopilot they talk about. That's how my brain works. And I called him. I called this guy whose number I got at that meeting, and we just talked. And I told him what was going on, and he told me, I don't really remember, but it might have been the reason, but whatever. He talked to me. He answered. And I called him. And
that's huge.
Yeah. It was. And then I called him again while we were there. And I remember I asked him, like, would it be okay if I just texted you every day? Or can we just do that? Like, long story short, he is my sponsor.
Yay!
I know, right?
Love that.
It was. I was really cute because when I got out of treatment, I really didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't asked him to be my sponsor yet, and I had to have the conversation. Like, it's cool that we're hanging out, but I want to see what else is out there. Like, it's so ridiculous.
But you don't know what you don't know.
Maybe we could just be mentor. Yeah. I was trying to make a funny friends with benefits joke, but that wasn't fast enough. But eventually it was, and we worked the steps together, and he's been there for me. Just
and at your lowest point.
All
it takes so much courage to pick up that phone. And it's, they call it, what is it, 500-pound brick or whatever. So to have that courage, and then he answers, and it's like green lights you, you know?
And it really was.
I don't know him, but I love him. For real.
Yeah. Because I remember asking him, like, do we have to have the same home group for you to be my sponsor? Because he met his sponsor at the Troutdale group, which is in Troutdale. And they meet Wednesday nights. And I'm like, because that's far away. And I don't know. And because I got out of treatment, I didn't have a job. I think I was still on unemployment at the time. And when I got out, I knew that I had to do different. And my job was to figure out when I was doing the same thing. Like, that was the real job. Figure out if I'm doing the same behaviors that I was doing.
Hanging around the same people, going the same places.
Yeah, just doing all that kind of stuff. And so I figured out I didn't have to know the right thing to do. I just needed to not do the old behavior. And so I had two default things to do, which was go to a meeting or put my sober head on a pillow. Those were the two things that I could do that I knew were safe. So I went to a lot of meetings.
I saw you.
Yeah. And I didn't even get to lunch brunch until like a few months after that. Oh gosh, I was December. I loved ESSR, Eastside Sunrise.
Mount Tabor.
Yeah, I'm Mount Tabor because I found that and I was like, oh, I can wake up early and I get 2 meetings in and I can start my day.
I love that.
And be so whatever.
And it's a good meeting.
It is. It's a very good meeting. I haven't been back in a while, but that introduced me into service or thinking about service and seeing what was out there, because I would get that done in the morning, which was like for sure recovery, start the day. And then I would just go
meeting.
And use the Chair app and just find different ones. And I do remember seeing Lunch Brunch, but I swear to God, I thought it was Lunch Brunch. And I thought it was like a food meeting or something. And I knew I wanted to go to an LGBT meeting. I don't think I had been to True Colors yet. I knew I wanted to go. And so I don't know what I was waiting for. Gosh. And then now I wish I had looked it up, because if you ever see me in a meeting, I have my little notebook.
Yeah.
And it started when I first got out as I had a list on my phone. I would just put the date and the meeting name. And then I found my little notebooks. And I write down the date, the day, the time, the meeting name, and the location. Just so I could know. And then I write down the secretary and the chair. And I'll write down the topic. So that's the default for what I write down. Just for me, because it just puts me in a place.
Right.
I do it at nighttime. So at nighttime, I not as detailed, but I write the date. I write what the topic is. And then if something's said good, like if Barry comes up with some good shit that night, I write it down, right? If it's Fred, but I try to find one thing from every meeting. And it's crazy. Sometimes I'll think, this bitch is whack. Okay, I'm just being honest with you. And then they'll say something, right? And I'll be like, holy shit. And I can't tell you how many times. And it's taught me not to judge. It's taught me I'm not better than you. We're all here for the same purpose. Though we might have a different path, we're all meeting at the same place. And it's really helped me not be judgmental and think I'm better than, because it's some of those whacked bitches that say the most incredible things and just like that stay with me that I may or may not ever say, but I feel. Yeah.
Because it was, and then usually, so sometimes I don't write things to remember them later. I write things to remember them now. That's why I write it down, is to like just put myself. It's helpful for later, but I've written a lot that I have yet to go back to. It's there someday, maybe memoirs, who knows? Yeah. And it's just, if there's a topic or if there's something, sometimes I'll find myself. I remember I was at 930 Plus, and on the wall they had the 12 principles, right? This was 12, the principles that go along with each step, right? Honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, love, discipline, perseverance, spirituality, service. And I don't think it's like straight from the GSO or something, but it works. And it got me to start to think about principles. Sometimes I'll just write that down the side of the page, just because what am I doing? How can I relate whatever is going through my head, whatever's coming out of anybody else's mouth to these?
Right.
Because that's the last part that we hear, and the steps to practice these principles in all our affairs. And that is it. How can I do this? And it's so, and nowadays, I mean, that's what I don't know what else to talk about, or if I don't know how to relate something to working the program, is how does it fit into those? Really, they're all so similar, but they're also unique in their own way, right? It's like, how can I learn to be the person that I wish that I was? And that's like a higher self thing. Like this, I know there's this out there, and that's what I know now. When I first started and I thought about those principles, I didn't know what it was. I couldn't, but by starting with that and starting to figure out what do these really mean to me, because that was like, oh, to live with principles. I don't know, that part of the 12 step, I got really interested at that at first. And at the very beginning, humility. Trying to understand humility was a huge thing for me, because my sponsor and I would have these conversations, and they would somewhat just relate around situations, or if I was trying to like figure out how to work well with others. Oftentimes humility is the answer. And so it was a big thing to come in to figure that out. It's one of the quotes that I keep with me. It's from the 12 and 12. Humility is having a good idea of where we are right now and where we want to go. If I can just know in that acceptance, and how do I get to acceptance but gratitude and generosity? And how can I move, or to go the other way? You start with gratitude and generosity, you can get to humility, and then you can get to anonymity, which is a place where, I love to get to, because it's always an action for me. I never just wake up and I think everybody is equal, or I never walk into a room and understand how important anonymity is to the program. It's always an action. I always have to do something to get there. Yeah.
Makes sense. I like how you think about it. You think about it differently. And I like that. Whatever gets you there, how we all think about it, I think some piece we grab. And I swear to God, for me at first, I always say this was just to get off parole. And then it was fucking, I like these guys.
It started with something I had to do.
Me too.
To get to somewhere else, to keep a job or to get out of trouble or whatever like that. And then I was half-hearted in the beginning.
Me too.
Especially when I first started with ECAC. And part of that, I think, was what I've mentioned often, is I just wasn't comfortable. I didn't feel I could be my full open self. So that held me back a bit. But also, like, where I see myself now is I live the program. It's hard for me in some ways to differentiate between if I'm doing this for life reasons or for the program reasons or for Peter reasons. It all starts to become just the way I live. When I first started, I had normie people. I had a way I acted with them, because that's how I always hid myself. Being gay, I had this mask and I could fit into any group. And so I would adapt. And then I did that in AA. I was normal. And then my AA people, I would talk differently, be different. I would be different over here. And then it was like, how do I exist?
Do you know when that changed for me? And it's sad and a little bit pathetic, for real. It was, my look good was so important to me, and to be professional, right? Because I wasn't. It wasn't like I was professional like you and had a good job and then lost it. It wasn't like that. I was 21 and I hadn't got there. Okay. So when I got there and started climbing up the corporate ladder, I just wanted to look like a great person, not like an ex-con, an ex-IV drug user and these things.
Right.
But when you and I were in my kitchen and I told you I felt like I was naked and I was on a stripper pole.
And your stories. Yeah.
But that was the first time that I knew they all could be blended. And I'm at that job, right? Which is the most uncomfortable place I've ever been. Jail was more comfortable. I'm dead serious. I'm there and I don't feel like I can be my authentic self either. Like I can't be, where at Sprint, I was there for 19 years. They knew I got in trouble. They knew I'm going to my meeting. It was so comfortable for me because I grew up with them where I was so uncomfortable. And then it was bougie. And it wasn't comfortable. But when we said that story and just let it out for everyone,
it's like there's no turning back.
There's no turning back. And that's when I think I didn't live separate lives, where it was the professional life, the AA life, the mom, the school life, and they all came together.
Yeah.
And that's when I told you I went into a meeting and they made us do these core values. And they said, what was the most important ones? And then you narrowed down and I said, and it wasn't on the sheet. And I said recovery out loud to everyone because it was the most important to me. And at that point in time, I think I had gone through IOP the first time and I didn't care what they thought. For the very first time, I didn't care that you have to know that I'm in recovery and it is the most important thing. And I really don't care what you think of me.
Yeah. And part of it too, I remember thinking, how am I going to be able to go to the normie things I used to do, like the parties and get-togethers and going out to the clubs. And for me, it was like fun is over for Peter. I'm going into this thing and it's done. And I've had more fun in AA than I've had.
Then he met me.
That's just it. Is I was never really having fun. Like I was so obsessed with drinking, even from the teenage years, of pot. And it was people asking, what do you want to do? And my answer was get fucked up. And that just drove my life.
Yeah.
And there was some other things that happened along the way, but that was, we're going to do this and drink. We're going to do this. And
smoke. I'd plan events if we were going out and make sure that the restaurant was not served. And had the whole, and it would just go in the back of my head. I was an unconscious thing, probably driven by the addiction. I would sit down at a table and I would note who's drinking white and red. And then when the bottles, I was like, I'd choose the one that I thought was going to have the most in it for me.
Yeah, type of thing, looking at a list by alcohol content and not by anything else. Yes. Ooh, what is barley wine or what?
Yeah.
Right. Especially with that before I moved out here and there was all the sneaking and it wasn't, I didn't have bottles hidden around the house. By the time I had my car. That's where all my bottles ended up. And it was crazy that I didn't get a DUI, but I would just drink during the daytime and drive around in my car. I was having to cover an eye. It was ridiculous what I would do. And then I would go home and my wife would be there and I would just, nope. Oh, I had a drink.
You're in our meeting. I know you live in clean and sober living.
I do now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to know, how do you feel now that you're not sneaking, like that your stuff is just open?
I finally have, that's a great question. It's a whole new life now. I get to finally start to work on what I want, which is still a really scary question. What do I want?
Yeah.
Because now that I'm a little over 18 months into recovery,
yay.
It's a big yay. And I was able to commit so much time to going to meetings, to be able to go to lunch bunch every day over a year.
That's what you needed. And I have to tell you that I always say, me and Colette, as a matter of fact, right? people go to treatment and they get clean. Doesn't mean they're going to stay clean. And luckily, I had the foundation of going to a meeting every day too. Like, I think the longer you go, the more safe you are.
I feel like I got a whole new lease on life. To use that phrase, I remember I've listened to speaker meetings like your podcast or what other people do, and these people who have so much time, and they talk about what they figured out at 5 years and what they figured out at 10 years and what they figured out at 20 years. And now I look forward to that.
Yeah.
I look forward to my future. I look forward
IOP at 25, babe.
to have so many new experiences that I don't dread anything anymore. It's just so open. And I know that me, my higher power, my program can get through it. And being no matter what, and being just able to show up for other people, I want to show up for myself.
Yeah.
I want you to, two things, because I know something very exciting happened to you that started on the 11th.
Right.
I even remember what day.
Yeah,
I was so excited for you. And it might not be your everything for the rest of your life, but it is for right now.
Yeah.
I want you to tell the listeners, just because we went to a pretty bad place, right? What you're doing right now.
Oh, yeah. So I started working for CODA at the Aggression Recovery Center as an ADST. And I get to work with 40 guys who are at this treatment center for all types of different reasons. And I get to see them and help them get to group. I get to dispense their meds. I get to see them, and I get to realize that I can have a job that is so much more than just a job.
Yeah.
I don't counsel these guys. I don't really even share my experience, strength, and hope with them. But I will say I did get to see somebody who graduated shortly after I started. I saw him at Extended Family the other night.
Oh, how cool is that?
And it was so cool.
That's awesome.
That is cool.
And he shared how he was struggling, and he came to the meeting, and he ended up at Extended Family.
Fucking A.
And that's it. And I get to show up and model recovery by just showing up and doing my job.
Yeah.
I don't have to convince anybody of anything. I don't have to tell them my story or try and tell them what their recovery has to look like. I just have to show up and do my job, do it well. And that's enough.
And probably the understanding where they've been.
Oh,
And dude that answered the phone call for you.
right. It really works. I had a guy ask me, it's really funny, he asked me twice, actually. He's like, why did you take this job? Because he seemed, I don't know if he was I have no idea what he was thinking, but I answered, I've been in recovery for 18 months and I wanted to figure out a way to see what working in recovery is like. And he acted surprised. And then the second time I told him it was pretty much the same answer, but just, this means a lot to me.
Right.
This is what I've decided to do, because now I get to make decisions that aren't motivated by having enough money to make everybody think that I'm okay.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I don't have to live like that anymore. I get to find this new freedom and this new happiness that luckily involves sobriety. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
But
there's
everything else after that of finally being the person that eventually I thought I couldn't be. Now I get to be the person who I always wanted to be and live a beautiful life.
Yeah.
I can't wait for your future. I'm excited for your future.
I know.
Really, I am.
Yeah.
I am too, which I never imagined.
And I think you're comfortable now. You're authentic.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think that's great.
And I was using so much of what I strived for was just empty things. I thought they were, gonna get ready for the party tonight or the going out or whatever. And I look back at those moments and because I would there was never enough for Peter. And so I would end up missing out. I would remember half of the shit that happened, even if it was good or bad or indifferent. And I would get so wasted so quickly that I wasn't a part of the whole thing. I'd duck out or pass out or whatever.
I thought the job was so important. And now not having a job and the things I've gotten to do, it's just how I pay my bills. It's not my whole fucking life.
Yeah.
One of the big things that I came to figure out is that because I was so invested in my partying or my drinking, in my escaping reality and my feelings, I never was able to do any of the work on myself. I was great at coming up with plans. I remember there was this one day not too long after I got out of treatment, I was walking the dog and I came up with a plan in my head of what to do next. And it felt really good. And then I immediately wanted to drink. Because that's what I would always do. Yeah. I would always come up with a great plan and go celebrate. And none of that plan would ever come to fruition because that's what I needed in my head. I have a plan. Isn't that good enough? No.
Action.
No, action. My program is a program of action.
Yeah.
And I get to do that now. And it starts with not picking up.
Yeah.
Love it. I want to thank you for coming, especially right after work. And I appreciate it. Appreciate your honesty too. I really do.
Being so vulnerable and open with us means so much. Yeah. So thank you for that. And
thanks for teaching me. There's some stuff I didn't know. Hey, and we taught you about monkey snot.
You did.
Okay, this is Julie.
And this is Peter with the Real Recovery Podcast, here with Conard. And thanks for listening. That's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks to each and every one of you for lending us your ears and hearts. Your engagement is what fuels our passion and keeps this podcast thriving.
We cherish the moments we share here and hope they resonate with you, whether you're on a daily commute, at the gym, or just taking a moment for yourself.
Make sure to head over to our website at realrecoverypodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to our newsletter for the latest insights and uplifting stories from our community delivered straight to your inbox.
Click that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player too, so you can keep up with every new episode. It's your support that keeps our conversation alive and meaningful.
And if our stories have touched you, consider using the donate button on our site. Your contributions, no matter the size, are deeply appreciated. They help us continue our mission of sharing hope and healing.
Join us beyond the podcast and follow our journey on social media. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. All the links are on our site, so you can stay connected and be a part of the Real Recovery community every day.
Your likes, shares, and comments not only spread the message of recovery, but also remind us that we're all in this together.
So, until we meet again, remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination, and we'll be here to accompany you every step of the way to recovery, real recovery.
Thanks for listening.